away some of these administrative burdens while still, so I'm not saying let it be a free-for-all, let's be clear. What I'm saying is you're subjecting regular business persons, regular professionals to a level of scrutiny that perhaps is too burdensome and is better suited for more sophisticated operators. That's number one. Number two, and this is specifically for my government Senator Minister Reid, in relation to the synergies, I think I like that word, the synergies which currently exist between TAMIS and the BRA in relation to corporations. So, Mr. President, as it currently stands, we know a corporation has to file its annual returns, and then it files its corporate income tax with TAMIS. We know that TAMIS is online only, and we know that the corporate returns which have to be filed, I saw the ads in the paper and I thought it was very good, and they have an open day clinic. So what I would like to throw out now to the government is how can we get TAMIS and the new Business Barbados to create one portal where you go in as a small businessman and say, hey, this is my taxes, this is what I've earned, here is evidence of my company, one form, one file, everything is done. I think that would be a wonderful challenge, and I look forward to if it is taken up to business efficiencies. The third one, Mr. President, is based on an article that was published this week by Dr. Ankie Scott Joseph, who I've had interactions with in a professional setting, and she's someone who comes across extremely thorough. And sir, what was indicated was that the effective tax rate of a professional or any person who earns $75,000 is now 32.8%. This is under the Income Tax Act, in case there's any query as to why we're having this discussion. The issue is, sir, that if someone earns $200,000, they're paying a tax rate of 32.5%. So you're actually paying less tax, 0.3%, if you earn 200K than if you earn 75K. And it's something which, a point which we have made before, and which I have certainly made, in that we need to look at our tax structure, in that those who can afford to pay more, and that this middle class, especially the young professionals, if something can be done to reduce the burden, because we cannot say fair is fair, and we have a situation where at $75,000, your effective tax rate is 32.8, and at $200,000, your effective tax rate is 32.5. So that's number three, and I look forward to hearing the debate at the budget time with regard to how they will deal with the levels, because it can be done, especially in light of the statements made in the other place with the excess that has been gained from the current tax structure. Mr. President, those are my contributions, and I am in support of this proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Kevin Boyce. Any more speakers? Senator Maladou.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make a couple of comments, and I will apologize for my voice. I came in from a flight of, I think, 32 hours last night, but I wanted to be here. First of all, sir, this legislation is completely in alignment with what government said they were going to do, and it is welcomed that the vast majority of local companies who are paying a 9% tax rate will no longer be subject to the economic substance tests, which really just created a bunch of paperwork and achieved nothing. So I'm extremely thankful for that. I will say that on the update, what we need though, for those three areas where the you have the shipping companies, the insurance companies, the IP companies, the BRA should work very quickly to publish the guidelines on how that is going to be interpreted. The economic substance rules for them is going to be interpreted. That needs to be done post-haste because we cannot afford to lose any more of those companies, because during the last few months or maybe years while there was grave uncertainty around this, and many people have spoken about the changes coming from other places that we can't be responsible for. We have lost a significant number of those companies already, and we do not wish to lose any more. So we need certainty. Businesses need certainty. And the regulations surrounding how you will interpret economic substance in those three areas is extremely important. With that said, I would be very interested if Senator Cummings had or would have at some point in the future to give us some statistics on how we are doing with these overseas companies. How many do we have? How many have we lost? What is the taxation that we're gaining from them? There is previous data, but with the change in the legislation now and all companies are considered local companies, it's hard to really figure out what's there. Couple other points, and then I would like to pick up on something Senator Boyce has said. Sir, the legislation that we're dealing with today addresses the past. It does not address the future. And the reality is that we need to stop complaining about who moved my cheese, because that's really what this is about. And we need to start looking at how do we craft a future international business regime for us? What can we do? And there has been a lot of talk, and I know the government had a consultant, and there was a lot of discussion about mutual funds and the blue-green economy, and we were going to attract these mutual funds here. And I'm curious as to what progress we have made with that. And I'm asking us just to stay ahead, not to react to what these other countries are doing to take our cheese away from us, but perhaps we can look other places to find new cheese. Two last comments, sir, and I won't take up a lot of your time, but Senator Boyce has triggered me to make a couple of comments on KYC and AML, and I want to endorse what he said absolutely, completely. And since he did mention the area of business that I often practice in, which is in real estate, I would like to make these comments about it. The KYC and AML regulations that are placed upon real estate agents in Barbados is completely unreasonable. Real estate agents do not handle client funds. It never passes through them, but the level of KYC and AML that they have to do, all it does is slow down business. It achieves nothing. It is a complete duplication without any added safeguards. Everything that a small real estate agent in Barbados might do for KYC or AML is already being done with much more competent people in the legal profession, who are the ones who are actually touching the money, who are collecting the money and dispersing the money. The real estate agents do not do that. And they get a proportionate fee for what they're doing. Sometimes zero, and sometimes whatever they would like for, it is not a legislated fee. It's a fee that they negotiate in the free market. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Senator Nichols, for pointing that out. There are unintended consequences on the sector. To maintain the KYC and AML obligations on real estate companies actually creates more risks, because some of these companies are very small. And when you ask them to collect this level of data, there becomes issues surrounding the security of that data. So I would like to endorse what Senator Boyce has said and have some form of threshold that is appropriate, just as this legislation is. And lastly, sir, my comments on taxation in general, and I've said this before a number of times, and unfortunately I'm going to have to say it again. I do hope at some point in time we would look at our overall tax regime in Barbados. Again, Senator Boyce, sorry to have to call on you, but you did point out the percentages, which I don't know them, but it does seem disproportional that a company can pay 9% tax, but the individuals who work in there may be paying 32.8 or 32.9 or 32.5%. And those who own businesses are therefore able to structure around that. Those who are purely employees pay the higher tax rate. So I actually believe that, and as I have suggested here before, is that we may want to completely abandon the idea of taxing people on what they earn and purely look at taxing people upon what they spend. That is the way that other jurisdictions have approached it, and I think it is one that makes sense. If you want to spend a lot of money, you pay a lot of tax. If you want to save your money, you can save your money as well without tax. And we have a tax system today, sir, that is fundamentally, or a business environment that is fundamentally a frustrating one, and we have to spend lots of time and come in here and talk about how do we facilitate so as to avoid the frustration. And then we talk about an uncompetitive environment where we have to provide concessions. So when I do hope in supporting this legislation, that at some point in time we can look at the overall income tax legislation and look to align it better with what our national interests are to grow this economy, being firm craftsmen of our fate and not relying on other countries for them to tell us what we can and cannot do. Let us look to what we would like to do and craft legislation that suits that. But as I said at the outset, sir, I support this legislation and I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Malado. Any more speakers? Senator Cummings. Sorry, Senator the Honourable Linda Durst.
Why do you do that?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have been in this honorable Senate since, I think, sometime in 2018. And over that 7-year period, quite a number of bits of taxation legislation have come before us, not because we wanted to amend the tax, but because some person or persons in the international community mandated or insisted that we comply with the rules and guidelines that they had developed. And I disagreed with a lot of what we were required to do, but I understood the reason why we had to do it. I understood that if we didn't make the various amendments, we would end up being blacklisted. We have invested a lot of money and effort and time in ensuring that we, meaning Barbados, comply with the requirements under the OECD and the EU. And I disagreed with a lot of what we were required to do, but I understood why we had to do it. We've reached the stage just earlier this year where we were removed from the I think it was the watch list or the, yes. And we obviously don't want to get back to that situation again, and therefore this is another piece of the puzzle, if you were, that we have to put in place in order to keep our jurisdiction from being referred to or considered as a harmful tax jurisdiction. But there's something about this particular one which I don't have a lot of objections to, because I understand it. And more, we have got to be able to see that whatever we do must be transparent, must be fair, and that the international community is going to be continuing to put that pressure on us to keep our jurisdiction clean. The point is this, that when we look at this whole question of economic substance, the OECD's position, of course, is that economic activities should really be aligned with where you create your value. That is to say, if you are generating your revenues in a particular jurisdiction, then the bulk of your taxation should, you should be paying tax in that jurisdiction, and not being made, and not creating what is essentially, sometimes referred to as, like, for example, shell companies, which effectively are set up here and for no other reason than to be able to benefit from the low tax regimes in Barbados and some of the other international offshore jurisdictions. I don't know how we have fared in terms of our international business sector over the last few years. It would have been interesting to see how many companies are still registered, if the sector is growing, if a number of companies have left, so that we get some idea of what the impact of these legislations and so on, which we have had to put in place to satisfy OECD requirements, what effect it has really been having on the sector in Barbados. And that is important to have that kind of information, because in the 90s, in the 80s, the 90s, particularly when the offshore sector was really growing, the number of persons employed in the sector was pretty significant. A lot of accountants found work in the sector. And as a matter of fact, there were times that it began to put pressure on some of the local accounting firms to find, staff to be able to perform their functions. It provided a significant amount of taxation revenues for the government. So the question is, we need to be able to look and to see how we have been affected because of having to put in place all of these new legislative requirements and regulations as mandated by the OECD. So the key aspects of the OECD position really are to combat harmful tax practices. There, you have companies claiming tax residence in, as I said before, in no or nominal tax jurisdictions without having a genuine economic presence. And there are there are not a lot of activities, fortunately, this time around, which will be affected, or which will affect sort of our local, what I would call our local business community. They're not things that are going to affect our local business activities. The things that they're looking at are insurance, for example, international financing, banking activities, for example, and leasing. So these are the type of things which we are not highly involved in, and that's so they shouldn't affect or a burden or a problem for our local business community per se. It will, of course, require significant resources in the Revenue Authority to be able to regulate and to police all of this, and I noticed that we have an implementation of this effectively comes into place from the 1st of January 2025. So effectively, this is something that the tax or revenue authorities will have to become efficient in terms of making sure the proper regulations are in place, in terms of being able to audit these international business companies to see that they are in fact complying with this economic substance requirements. So what are we going to be looking for? And we know things like, we've heard about things like mine and management, for example, where the companies will have to demonstrate that they are being managed, these international business companies will have to demonstrate that they are being managed here in Barbados. We will have to show that there's adequate levels of staffing, that the expenditures are commensurate with the level of revenues which are being generated and being reported in this jurisdiction. And so these are the things that the tax authorities will have to be paying attention to and will have to be able to review and give a clean slate or a clean report to these various international offshore companies. As I said, I think I don't have a lot of objection to this particular bill, because I think that it is important that more and more we move in line with best practices and transparency, and that we can be satisfied that activities, business activity, which is undertaken and which is going on in this jurisdiction is really genuine, is really genuine activity. And this is what basically the economic substance legislation is hoping or is set out to achieve. I don't know if we, as a result, we will lose some more of our international business companies. We will, of course, have to wait and see. But I would hope that the sector, even with all of these requirements, will still continue to grow, because it is an important economic sector for Barbados. As I said, in terms of employment, in terms of generating tax revenue, in terms of all of the persons who have, non-residents who have come to work here and who have to live in hotels or rents or whatever, who go out to dinner and so on. And therefore, they also input a lot of business into the Barbadian community. And so I hope that we don't lose out on all of that because of having to introduce this legislation. So the overall position is that while multinational enterprises can operate globally, their tax planning must align with actual reality of where their business functions, where their assets and risks are located. And with those few words, Mr. President, I am ready.
Thank you very much, Senator Nurse. Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And as is the norm, I want to thank all of the honorable senators who have spoken on this bill, and I'm going to attempt to respond to as many of the queries and comments as I can. Senator Worrell, thank you for your comments. It is always a good day when the government and the opposition can agree on the importance of a measure and be mutually complementary on a single matter. So today is a good day. No wonder we had the rains over the last few days, but today is a good day. But, Mr. President, in responding to the concerns legitimately raised by Senator Worrell and all of those who have spoken about the constantly moving goalposts, the number of times since 2018, we in this chamber who sit here now, who've been here since May of 2018, have had to come to make changes to the global business regime. We know what this feels like. For those who are Barbadians and who have lived in Barbados all this time, or who have followed Barbados all this time, even before we sat in this chamber, changes always had to be made. We always talked about feeling as if the goalposts were being moved and that other jurisdictions were determining what our fate should and should not look like. And in 2023, Mr. President, one Sunday evening, I should say, one of the government's tax advisors, the former OECD Director of Tax Policy, actually, who, once he left the OECD, joined Barbados to make sure that we could legislate now from on the inside outward, that they called and they raised a concern. They said that at the time, Barbados was in danger of not meeting a critical threshold where the global business sector was concerned. It required, Mr. President, around 7 o'clock, during that afternoon, I should say, the Prime Minister called me, and I in turn mobilized the team along with the Barbados Revenue Authority, at the time Revenue Commissioner, and we agreed that we would assemble that Sunday night at 7 p.m. in Baobab Towers. We all went there, a team of contract professionals, the technical teams, and the leadership. And together with the International Business Unit, as it was called then, we gathered and stayed in Baobab Towers in the Global Business Unit until 5:30 the following morning, where we went home, showered, changed, and went back. And the team continued to work. And during the course of that night, persons like Senator Boyce, now renamed Senator Hines, but Senator Boyce, got calls from 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning as corporate trust service providers for the purpose of meeting the requirements of the submission of information so that we, in turn, in the IBU, could share that information with the BRA, and the BRA, under their obligations under the treaty with the OECD, could submit their exchange of information submissions and the automatic exchange of information requirements so that where there were companies in Barbados operating, that we could meet those requirements. We know what jumping through hoops looks and feels like. We managed, by doing what I've just described, to avoid Barbados finding itself on any gray or any blacklist because of non-compliance. That is an example, Mr. President, of Barbadians doing what is necessary. And I remember in my engagements during that period with the OECD, saying to them, when we come to meetings, to international meetings in the OECD, there are delegations that have 20, 30 people just at the meeting. But in their offices back at headquarters, they've got hundreds of staff. In Barbados and small island developing countries like ours, we don't have that. We do not have those numbers, but yet we have to meet the requirements in the same way that those large delegations and those large countries and those large organizations with large turnovers, like Senator Worrell said, they have to meet this. We have to meet the same requirements. And we have always argued that it has been disproportionate for small economies. So there's no question that not only has Barbados had to jump through hoops, but the fact that we are off the gray and the black list of the world suggests that we have jumped through those hoops successfully. Mr. President, you on the AML side have also been a part of the process, along with the Office of the Attorney General, in making sure that we successfully were able to announce earlier this year that some changes were made and Barbados was able to be removed from the listings. And that too was a collaborative effort led by the Office of the Attorney General, the Central Bank of Barbados, Business Barbados, the Barbados Revenue Authority, all kinds of agencies being pulled from all kinds of places to jump through the hoops that we all agree have been imposed on us. So we can make no arguments there, Mr. President. Now, Senator Boyce made a couple of comments that I want to attempt to give some answers to. On Sunday, many of you would have seen a full-page ad in the newspaper for Business Barbados. One of the things that I shared on previous occasions was that there is an issue with annual returns. When you know that you have an income tax filing to make under the Income Tax Act for your personal income, you know that there's income tax season. If you have corporation tax, you know that there's corporation tax season. But for annual returns, they correlate under the existing legislation to the date on which your company was incorporated. So it means that there is no annual return season universally in the same way that corporation tax and income tax would apply. And so we've made a decision as a ministry, specifically through Business Barbados, to get out of the offices and into the communities to be able to work with those who find themselves in difficulty having not filed annual returns. Because if you have not filed annual returns, what happens is that there's a charge day on day on day, and there's an annual cap that will take you up to a maximum of $3,000 in any given year. But the number of years that those annual returns can remain outstanding can run you into thousands of dollars, and we have seen that happening. And so what we have tried to do in our customer-facing approach of Business Barbados is to have those customer clinics, those community clinics, where we now have begun proactively to engage with the business community. And so that's what Senator Boyce is referring to, and that will continue throughout the year so that we are in a position to make sure that that proactive, outward-facing customer service becomes the new mantra for Business Barbados. I did say that it's not magic when I brought that piece of legislation into this chamber, establishing Business Barbados effective April 1 earlier this year, that there were 30 years plus, if not more, of old legislation that needed to be reviewed and needed to be reformed, and I could not just snap my fingers and it would all go away, but it would be a process, and the publication of that annual returns clinic in the Sunday Sun, as it will continue to be, is a part of those interventions to make sure we are making business easier for people in this country. Equally, Mr. President, the Companies Act. The Companies Act is an old piece of legislation that has been amended more times than I can count, or any of us can count. And so we have undertaken to begin a complete legislative overview of the Companies Act to bring it into compliance with a modern era. Senator Boyce mentioned Canada. We actually are looking at the Canadian model because that is one of the best practices, but we are also equally looking at other jurisdictions to make certain that we have a brand new Companies Act that correlates to where Barbados is in 2025, 2026, and where we intend to go. Now, Senator Boyce also raised questions about the readiness, as did Senator Lindell Nurse, the readiness of the Barbados Revenue Authority and the ability to get the arrangements put in place. Senator Malalou also made passing reference to it. These amendments, Mr. President, were elaborated on in tandem with the Barbados Revenue Authority, hand in hand, hand in glove. We worked as the International Business Unit and the Ministry of International Business alongside the Barbados Revenue Authority. There's a question that was asked about a portal. When we were creating Business Barbados and we were making changes to the portal, we undertook to ensure that there were synergies created. And the first entity that we met with to ensure that those synergies were created was with the Barbados Revenue Authority, so that businesses, small and large, could then be able to have a single interface with the government of Barbados when making these submissions, and that work is underway. Specifically to small businesses, that work has actually been completed. So there is a dedicated portal housed by the Barbados Revenue Authority with the endorsement of the Ministry with Responsibility for Business that allows for that single interface. Equally so, Mr. President, on the question of companies that remain within the compliance framework for our global business, That also, Mr. President, has been brought into alignment with the Barbados Revenue Authority. There are additional fields that needed to be added into the income tax, the corporate tax submission, and those have already been, that work has already been advanced, and we expect that by the time the business community begins to interface with the system, if they have not done so already, that they will see that not only is the Barbados Revenue Authority not in an advanced state of readiness, but they are completely ready to take these actions moving forward. Now, there was a question raised about how Barbados has fared in this global business sector and how we have treated to the revenues. Now, in the other place, the minister in the Ministry of Finance spoke about the collection of corporation tax. And if I think I remember in 2024, when I came here, we spoke about $470 million odd being collected from the global business sector. Last year, 2023, last year, we saw over $1 billion in revenue being collected under corporation tax, specifically for those companies that are within scope. And you remember what the definition is of within scope. But how has the sector fared in the last year? In my ministry, we have just completed, actually, for submission, an assessment of that question. Where is the sector? How many businesses are registered in the sector? How many were dissolved? How many have left? Where have they left? What have they said on leaving? And I want to just share a few of those statistics here. In 2020, we went as far back as 2020. We had new registrations of limited liability companies, 934. The dissolved companies were 207. So for 237 companies that were dissolved in 2020, 934 were registered. In 2021, 134 companies were dissolved. In 2021, 995 were registered. In 2022, 186 were dissolved and 1,028 were registered. In 2023, 201 companies were dissolved, 1,449 were registered. In 2024, 311 were dissolved and a high of 1,517 were registered. So clearly we can see that there is a consequential difference between the number of new companies being registered in the country vis-a-vis those that are being dissolved. I want to draw attention also to the primary reasons for those companies that have been dissolved and have shifted jurisdiction. 19% of them indicated that the economic substance requirements that we are here repealing were the reason for them shifting jurisdiction. 19% of those companies that shifted. And so we can see, Mr. President, that what we're doing here and what we have agreed that is important for us to do here has a direct impact on Barbados's attractiveness as a domicile for global business. So I'm hopeful that having shared that data with the colleagues, that you are then in a position to use it in your respective spheres of influence. No, I take the points that have been raised by Senator Boyce specific to the transitional arrangements in Section 3.1.2, as well as the interpretation periods, how lawyers versus accountants reconcile that, and I will share that with the Barbados Revenue Authority, as well as a point made by Senator Malalou on the publication of guidance notes with the Barbados Revenue Authority. I have already taken the time to share the query with the new Barbados Revenue Commissioner, Mr. Jason King, and as soon as he provides me with an answer, I commit to giving you that response. So with these few words, Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill, this is order number 10 we begin with, to be clear. This will be read a second time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting is the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that we go back to public business and to appoint Senator Lindell Nurse as the acting deputy president for the remainder of today's sitting.
The question is that Senator the Honorable Lindell Nurse be appointed as Deputy President for the remainder of today's sitting. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Thanks, the ayes have it. Senator Nurse, thank you for agreeing to be appointed as Deputy President of the Senate for the remainder of today's sitting.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair and honorable the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Honorable Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that clause 1 do not stand part.
The question is that part 1 do now stand. Sorry. Clause 1, sorry, do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 2 do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 3 do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 4 do not stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill not be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Companies Economic Substance Repeal Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Companies Economic Substance Repeal Act of 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 11, sir. You name the Honorable Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve it. Mr. President, I beg to move this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill, the Income Tax Amendment, yes, the Income Tax Amendment Act of 2025, be read a second time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair and the Honorable the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
This one. The Honorable Senate is now in committee.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 1 do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 2 do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 do not stand part.
The question is that clause 3 do now stand part. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the President the passage of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Will all those honorable senators in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Deputy President has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act of 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this sitting of the Senate be suspended for lunch to reconvene at 2:30 p.m.
The question is that, Ms. Rodman?
Order number 13, sir. To to move the second reading, I beg your pardon, order number 12, namely the Honorable Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the final appropriation bill 2022-23. Final appropriation 2022-23 bill 2025. And these bills were certified money bills.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Permission to treat two orders number 12, 13, and 14 as a single item.
The question is that we take orders number 12, 13, and 14, which are appropriation bills related to 3 financial years, as a cognate debate. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The next ayes have it. We will therefore treat these items with a cognate debate. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, these are administrative and more regulatory matters than they are substantive. And so, as you know, we on an annual basis pass the estimates of expenditure, the approved estimates of expenditure, but we also have a number of supplementary requests that may come through during the course of the year. These appropriations bills simply reconcile any supplemental resources that were added on to the appropriately approved appropriations, the approved expenditure for each financial year, and these will cover financial years 2022, 2023, 2023 to 2024, and 2024 to 2025. And so, Mr. President, I beg to move that these bills do not pass as money bills.
We're still on item number 12. The question is that this bill, this is a money bill, so there's no going to the committee, but the question is that this bill, order number 12, be read a second time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move this bill do not pass a third time, be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is accordingly read a third time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill, the final appropriation bill 2022-2023, bill 2025, do not pass. And be so cited.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the final appropriation 2022 to 2023 Act 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against please say no. The next ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the final appropriation 2023 to 2024 bill 2025.
Mr. President, I beg to move this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is read a second time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as a final appropriation bill 2023-2024 bill Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the final appropriation 2023 to 2024 Act of 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 14, in the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the final appropriation 2024-25 bill 2025.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as a final appropriation 2024-2025 Act 2025.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the final appropriation 2024 to 2025 Act 2025. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, that brings us to the end of government's business for today, and I beg to move that this sitting of the Senate be adjourned sine die.
The question is that the Honourable Senate do not adjourn sine die. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This Honourable Senate is therefore adjourned sine die.